most right-wingers cannot define the word woke. They get very angry about what they perceive to be woke. But when you ask them for a definition, they don't know what they're talking about. Even Bethany Mandel, who wrote an entire book about quote-unquote wokeness, still could not define to Brianna Joy Gray what woke even means. I don't know what it means, no one knows what it means. It's just what conservatives don't like, they just call it woke. Now, in the latest in a long line of ridiculous things that have been termed woke, according to the Daily Mail, the foremost arbiter of what does or does not count as woke has decided that Zoomers, of all things, they like woke sandwiches, chat. They like woke sandwiches. What is a woke sandwich, you ask? Well, the Daily Mail are here to tell you what a woke sandwich is. Well, I'll tell you what a woke sandwich is not, apparently, according to this title. A woke sandwich is apparently not ham and mustard. Why ham and mustard is not woke, and how any other filling can be woke, I don't know. Let's learn together, shall we? Let's learn together what does or does not count as woke. Gen Z Brits are turning their backs on British sandwich classics like ham and mustard and cheese and onion in favour of fancy fillings like avocado, olives and continental cheese. Oh, so just European rather than British. If it's European, then it's woke. Of course, they're going after avocado right after the avocado toast stuff, but we'll get on to that. Popular bread manufacturer Allinson's launched its Great British Sandwich Study to lift the lids on the nation's lunchboxes and reveal their changing taste for the beloved lunchtime snack. Researchers quizzed Brits of all age groups on their sandwich preferences, from their favourite type of bread to their ideal fillings, and even how they slice their sarnies. The study has highlighted a trend away from sandwich classics like ham and mustard or cheese and onion in favour of toasted alternatives filled with more exotic ingredients. Now, I don't like cheese and onion because I think it's bland, but if you're going to have cheese and pickle at least, right? Cheese and pickle is like the quintessential British cheese sandwich, or ham and cheese, right? But cheese and onion, though, that's a bit bland. I'm not having cheese and onion, it's a bit weird. Ham and mustard seems fine, but why ham and mustard is like anti-woke and other things aren't woke? Like, why continental cheese is somehow woke? Doesn't make any sense to me, but hey-ho. While sliced ham is a sandwich stalwart for the older generations, with a quarter, 26% of boomers saying it's their number one meat, gym-loving Gen Z prefer leaner chicken. Apparently chicken is woke now, chat. Apparently chicken is woke. Here was me thinking it was just olives and cheese that was potentially woke. No. Apparently chicken is now woke now as well. It's woke because the Gen Z like to go to the gym. A gym's woke too? I don't even know at this point. It's all very silly. And if anything demonstrates how nebulous a concept woke is, this article certainly is the canary in the coal mine. Let's continue. Only 1 in 100 Gen Z would consider pairing ham with English mustard, compared to 1 in 10 of the baby boomer generation. Not even like a large amount of boomers like ham and mustard, apparently. 1 in 10 is 10%. That's not a large amount of boomers. If you want to try and market Daily Mail, ham and mustard as being the quintessential British sandwich, maybe don't try and pin that on 10% of one generation eating it as somehow being indicative of being popular. That's not popular if it's 10% of boomers eating it, but whatever. English cheddar appears to also be on the decline despite being enjoyed by nearly 6 in 10 of Brits, according to the survey of 2,000 sandwich lovers. 2/3 of boomers say cheddar is their favourite cheese for a sandwich, with that number falling through the age groups just over half of Gen Z, so still a majority still like cheddar. It's not that big of a difference in terms of cheddar, it's still the majority support, because of course it's the best cheese, right? Let's be real. I bet the woke Gen Z, I bet they like their cheese mild rather than mature, because they're so immature. They're so immature, the young people. It's student politics to like mild cheese. Only true British boomer patriots like mature cheese. Cathedral city or bust, right? I don't know. I'm spitballing here, chat. This is all ridiculous. Anything I could say would be valid at this point. Gen Z are almost as likely to include continental cheese as they are English cheddar in their sandwich. This compares to just over a quarter of baby boomers. Again, is continental cheese woke? I don't know. Another growing sandwich trend is for fancy fillings like avocados, peppers, chilies and olives. I think you'll find peppers are not fancy. I'm assuming they mean bell peppers here? What other peppers could they be talking about? Like, how are bell peppers like a fancy filling? What? Is this the Second World War? Hello? With 1/3 of Gen Z opting for upmarket extras over just 1 in 10 of baby boomers. Okay, right. I'm going to drop some of the pretense here and go on to the serious discussion I wanted to have of this, because broadly, the discussion of, well, it's a fancy ingredient or it's a healthy ingredient, therefore it's woke. And I think I can tease why this has become part of the lexicon and why Daily Mail have been able to somehow Frankenstein's monster together this article about how certain sandwich ingredients can be woke, right? So they describe some of these ingredients as being continental or upmarket that they put into the woke category, right? So things like avocado and olives, for example. Now, anybody who's gone to Lidl recently knows that avocados and olives, they're not expensive. They're not upmarket. It's not upmarket to eat olives and avocados. Avocados are 50p in Lidl. They're not expensive. They're not an expensive luxury commodity. So to try and market this as being, well, it's woke to do it, I guess because it's like conspicuous consumption in their minds, even though it isn't. Like when you go to the shops, like a chicken, bacon and avocado sandwich is the same cost as a turkey and stuffing sandwich. Like there's no difference in cost here that makes it more upmarket, okay? So this idea that it's somehow a more expensive or fancy ingredient, at least in terms of cost, that's not true. But it wasn't always this way. So when you look at it from a generational perspective, in the way that these people eat the foods that they do, and the fact that it's boomers that diverge with Gen Z here, there was a turning point in how we consumed food in this country in the 80s and definitely within the 90s, the late 80s and 90s, and definitely in the 2000s as well. There's the neoliberal period before the financial crisis, where opening up of markets and opening up of free trade meant that we imported way more food than we used to make at home, that we used to grow at home. So whereas boomers who would have grown up in households where it was all British food that you made with British ingredients, it was all locally grown produce, and if you wanted to buy fancy things, it was going to be really expensive. It was going to be upmarket. It was going to be a luxury commodity, a luxury purchase for you to be eating anything that was an imported food until the neoliberal kind of free trade revolution happened and suddenly we were all able to eat our Moroccan blueberries or whatever it is, or getting things imported on the cheap because the free trade era had lessened the barriers for importing these commodities and made them affordable, to the point at which we are at the point now where it's just as cheap to buy avocados as it is to buy any other vegetable or fruit. So this cultural shift of eating the food you grew on the allotment to just buying any food down at Tesco, even though older people are still have access to the supermarkets, and they do eat avocados too. Like maybe the sandwich fillings are different, but just because you're younger doesn't mean you're like way more likely to eat an avocado. Like these things broadly have moved amongst generations. The cultural relevance and the cultural reputation these ingredients have because of the formative years of people's lives, that never goes away. So you'll hear lots of people describe young, progressive, socially progressive, social justice types as being out of touch because they eat fancy foods and that makes them middle class or whatever. Well, no, it doesn't actually. It doesn't make you middle class if you eat avocados because, again, they're not a luxury commodity anymore. It's not an indicator of class. It's not an indicator of financial ability to pay because it's the same price now. But it had the cultural connotation in this country broadly up until the late 80s, early 90s that it absolutely did. And breaking your mind out of that very specific position, that very specific frame of mind about what constitutes something being upmarket or fancy or middle class based upon the price, that doesn't really go away because you still have that association even if the price becomes way lower and it becomes a far more consumable commodity. And I say this as somebody who doesn't eat fancy food, you know? I far prefer beans on toast than I would prefer a bacon and avocado sandwich, mostly because I hate the taste of avocado, but like, whatever. It doesn't matter anyway, because the consumption habits under neoliberalism are way different to the consumption habits previously. Neoliberalism has made previous luxury consumption much cheaper, but has made a lot of necessary consumption more expensive. So there's a huge disconnect from older people who never really ate fancy imported food, but who had cheap housing and bills when they were growing up, are looking at younger people who have incredibly expensive housing, who have essentially debilitatingly expensive housing costs and things like energy costs, loads of things that you have to have access to, have massively shot up in price because neoliberalism has made these very specific inelastic markets become far more egregious in terms of how the owners of those can hike up the price to maximize their return on those particular inelastic markets. the nature in which our deregulation of a load of these other sectors under the free trade era of neoliberalism has made these luxury commodities cheaper. Like, you can literally spend less money if you go on holiday than paying your rent. You can get a 2-week holiday in quite a reasonably nice 3-star resort in an island in the Adriatic for less than it costs to pay for your rent in an HMO in the UK, in like a city that isn't London. So this stark divide in lived experience of what is cheap and what is expensive is why you hear things like, well, young people are all middle class fancy SJW types who eat woke sandwiches because it's got avocado in it and who can't buy a house because they didn't work as hard as I did, is entirely a function of a completely differing set of material circumstances that have completely flipped from the economic era that they grew up in, the economic era that young people grew up in. And I find it really interesting. I find it really interesting to look at these differences in consumption habits and how they shape the way in which we view things, to the point at which it has gotten into the public consciousness so much that the Daily Mail can put an entire article about how chicken is woke and how olives are somehow woke, even though, like, your food consumption habits is nothing to do with your socio-political opinions. Nothing summarizes this discussion better than millennials and zoomers can't afford houses because they buy avocados. Because boomers think that avocados are expensive and houses are cheap, but millennials and zoomers know that avocados are cheap and houses are expensive. It's why that very specific dynamic can happen, because of perceptions of what counts as being expensive in terms of living conditions. Super interesting that very specific dynamic has played out in the fundamental discourse in the way in which we look at house prices in this country, where literally avocado prices and house prices have completely different conceptions of whether or not they're high or low, when avocados are objectively cheap. They're objectively 50p for an avocado is a cheap commodity. It's not expensive to buy avocados, right? But houses going from 4 times the salary to 10 times the salary in the space of 20 years, that is genuinely unaffordable. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.